All right, so here we go. Welcome. It is Tuesday. And like I said, I want to put some finishing touches here on Mao. So that sources activity we started yesterday, I want to get some closure with that. And then kind of like what we did with Hitler and Stalin, just evaluate to what degree of a totalitarian Mao is. And, you know, we did have, some of us had a casual conversation before school started anyhow about, you know, how long Mao was leader of China. And so that can, when we look at totalitarians and to a degree of them, you can look at the longevity of these rulers or these authoritarians. And so Mao, remember, is really head of the People's Republic of China from 1949 all the way up to 1976. So he's been there for a very, very long time, just like Stalin was of the Soviet Union. Hitler, he was not there as long. Others that could fit into that category, we also threw in there, like, you know, Fidel Castro and this guy from Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, as well. All right, so with that, I want us to finish that video clip that we started yesterday. At the end of the Cultural Revolution, it had talked a little bit about the chaos that the Cultural Revolution had created. And it is at the conclusion of the Cultural Revolution is when Mao does pass on. So we can get a sense of how important Mao was for China, but then also take a look at how China is going to be able to move forward, all right? And who takes over. So here we go. Let's pick up with that video clip where we left off. We have maybe about 5 minutes here with it. Before I start that video clip, does there anyone have any questions or concerns? Those at home, if you have any questions, concerns, always put it in the chat, please. None? All right. So let me get that started here.
We all felt we were the true defenders of Chairman Mao's revolution. To die for the great leader was an honor.
The anarchy spread. Schools and hospitals closed. Offices and factories were in chaos.
The factory almost came to a standstill. Production was impossible. We had meetings every day and workers were denounced. We didn't know what to do. One day you'd be arrested, and the next day it would be my turn. We didn't know what would happen to the country. Many workers committed suicide by jumping in front of trains or into the river.
The attempt at a state of continuous revolution was impossible to keep up. People craved the return of a more normal, stable life. After 2 years, the army had to be called in to end the factional fighting, restore order, and help to re-establish the party's authority. And the Red Guards were sent to the countryside to cool off and learn from the peasants. But the Cultural Revolution only ended with Mao himself in 1976.
高山在痛哭，大海泪涛涌，惊天动地的噩耗啊，震撼全球。我国各族人民敬爱的伟大领袖毛泽东同志于1976年9月9日在北京逝世。
In a bid to keep the country together, the propagandists exploited the scenes of mass emotion on Mao's death. Much of the grief was genuine, and many had seen their lives improve beyond measure. But many millions had suffered or died as victims of Mao's rhetoric. All his charisma hadn't delivered the new society he'd promised. After Mao's death, his closest associates, the Gang of Four, were arrested and charged with throwing the country into chaos. His most cherished ideas were abandoned. His successor, Deng Xiaoping, tried to replace ideology with economics. The Chinese were to be mobilized not by dreams of equality, but by money. In the 1980s, political control was as tight as ever. But the slogan from the top was, "To get rich is glorious." One legacy of Mao's reliance on popular action remained. During the Cultural Revolution, he'd allowed the students to challenge authority and feel a new sense of liberation. After Mao, the state always knew that the people, once they'd learned how, might try to challenge the party's authority again. And their fears were to be borne out on Tiananmen Square in 1989.
I remember that one vividly. I was a student at the University of Minnesota, and the students from China had created a version of the Goddess of Liberty that had appeared in Tiananmen Square during that time period in 1989. But it looked that when you look back at Tiananmen Square, China was willing to modernize and change the economy, change the military, change education, change science, but they were not willing to give up, as we say, it's the four modernization. They weren't willing to have a fifth modernization, which was opening up the political process, something like a glasnost. They may have been engaging in, again, that economic reform, but they weren't interested in openness necessarily. So, is China really a true communist state? One would say probably no, it is not. Communist in name, but it still is a dictatorship, but we'll say the dictatorship of the proletariat, big time. All right, so with that, Mao passes on. And what you have is, people in China remember, or if you remember back from world history studies, when a dynasty comes to an end, there's always signs and omens out there. And in 1976, when Mao does die, right before he does pass on, there is a massive earthquake in China, and that will in some ways serve as that sign that there is change occurring. So one would be not surprised. Zhou Enlai had passed on, and he was like the #2 guy in China, very popular. And then Mao dies. And so really the main architect, some would say the vanguard, is starting to pass on in China. Big stuff. All right. So being sent to the countryside to cool off and live with the peasants, does that sound punishing? Or, if you say, we're going to send you off to re-education camp, that might sound perhaps a little bit more punishing than just go out to the countryside and cool off. That's like, let's go to the lake and cool off. They're going to go to the countryside, cool off, and live with peasants. you know, when they do go off to the countryside and cool off, they really are engaging in self-criticism and aligning themselves with the ideals. Now, today in China, if you're going to be a leader, you in some ways find yourself needing to show some type of connection, though, to the Cultural Revolution as one of those Red Guards. That just to show how devoted you are to that. All right, so there we go. Sources activity. Let's break that thing out. Let's take a look at it. I said we're gonna put some closure to it. We're gonna deal with that last one together here. But you know, question 4 was having you look at the Great Leap Forward. All right. And with that, with the Great Leap Forward, those 2 charts there really are going to indicate that the Great Leap Forward was a disaster. As you can see from about 1958 to 1962, in just about most of these areas, productivity does go down. You do have that little outlier here for steel and for coal, and perhaps maybe that's because of you know, those furnaces are really kicking in, but then you have a massive drop there. And then you also look up here as well. This one, though, is agriculture, and we're not really shocked and surprised that those numbers go down, primarily because people are working, creating those backyard furnaces, and that a drought is going to be kicking in as well. So that's going to be problematic there. Now, this one right here is dealing with the Cultural Revolution. It is criticism of the Cultural Revolution, and it's focusing more on the art and maybe absent of it. Freedom of thought going in there, and lack of perhaps culture and things in the arts related, probably because of all the self-criticism that they need to do. Almost 24/7 of self-criticism with that. But you need to do like an OPVL. All right. And when you look at values here, you know, it is a victim. It is a person who has firsthand experience of being caught up in the Cultural Revolution. A limit would therefore then also be is perhaps maybe the person has a motive in speaking out in 1998. But also when we look at limits, it's from done in a Western news media outlet. So there might be a bias in that aspect or a perspective, and also time, 1998. Cultural Revolution happened 66 to 76, 1998. Over time, what usually happens to our memory? Gets a little distorted. Gets a little distorted. It's a little distorted, absolutely. You might always have to ask other people, you know, that really happen? Or, yeah, like you said, distorted. So over time, you have that issue there. So that could be a problem, and we don't really know. We don't really know realistically how long this self-criticism happened, and we don't know what was really truly the acceptable nature of art at this time as well. So we got some limits there.
What did the people do for self-criticism?
Well, usually that self-criticism, you know, some of the things does engage in trying to evaluate where you might have strayed from the revolutionary thought. You have that little red book. That's your guide. That's your blueprint. And has anyone ever looked at the little red book? And if you did, does not necessarily mean you're a communist. Yeah. I've read I read the Communist Manifesto, but I don't think that makes me a communist. You have?
Yeah.
Okay. And realistically, the Little Red Book is just a bunch of what? Yeah, it's just his sayings, quotes. You got themes, and then you have all these little quotes that he has said over the years. And so you are going back and you are looking at that Little Red Book and you are engaging in some criticism. It could also mean doing what we might say some community service as well. You know, if it does mean hanging out with the peasants and understanding how they live and live like that. Like Jiang Xiaoping, all right? He takes over for Mao through a power struggle, but when he was sent off to the countryside, one of his jobs was to repair tractors. And you were like, oh, dude, man, that's like under his grade. But the whole idea is to make you feel like a peasant and recalibrate your thinking and give a sense of humility. Yeah. But I don't know I should have started off, I don't know the full nature of that self-criticism. So. All right. So with that, can we make a claim that Mao's policies did affect the people of China? For sure. We could easily, yes, we could. We could. So one could say, you know, Mao's policies were far-reaching. Absolutely. But here, here's where, you know, again, in that intro, it's like, you know, how was it far-reaching? You know, his Mao's policies impacted thought, the economy, activities, and family structure. Or one could say, yeah, we'll go family structure. Now, I did that, you know, again, if we were going to be writing this full essay, I wrote it that way. It impacted thought, because there is a document that highlights thought. The economy, and we know that there are some charts that show that. Activities, okay? And again, there are some documents that speak to that. And the activities can be very broad in that it can be social activities, but it can also be economic activities. Arts can fit in there as well. And then the family structure, and we know that there was a poster that was related to that. So then now it comes down to your sources. We have that, but I'm going to jump quickly here to looking at the outside info before we look at some of those sources here. Outside information, things that these documents did not, or these sources did not address at all. And so when we think of outside information, policies, programs, activities that could also change people's lives. Does anyone have any thoughts there?
Like, I know for theater, they switched from doing traditional plays, like with emperors and stuff like that, to more pro-communist plays with like communist battles and stuff like that happened during the Civil War.
Okay, so you could say, you definitely go the arts focused more on revolutionary themes instead of traditional. Okay, that's a good one. Any others that could possibly fit in there? So I think if you know, like your policies activity, there's a number of things that were brought up in there, like if we look at the economy, the agrarian law. The agrarian law is going to accomplish, start to accomplish what Mao was going to be doing, and that was land redistribution. However, only for that land to be taken away. And when they create the communes system, that became a disaster in the Great Leap Forward program. And then, you know, like when you did the People's Republic of China, the creation of the People's Republic of China, you know, how does he do that? Through a lot of mass movements. So any of these, you know, you could also include mass movements. You know, like the what we call like the 100 Flowers campaign. You know, that would be an example of that, or any of those. I think also we had one that was called like the Three Antis campaign. All right. You know, so any of that stuff can fit in there. Changing the lives, and if you were someone from Tibet, I think your life would be changed as well. Or in the place of that we're starting to see in Hong Kong, all right? Even though Hong Kong is happening now, you know, that whole reunification campaign. Well, these would be examples of things that you could bring into, if we were going to write this essay, mini essay. All right. So thinking about these sources then. Thinking about these sources. All these would be good sources. So how about someone out there volunteer one you think that would be a really good one, a good tasty one to add as a possibility.
Source G.
Source G. And why would you pick Source G?
It talks about how certain aspects of, like, especially music, were affected by Mao's policy. So it could be talking about and activities were impacted.
Okay. Really, you know, when you look at the Cultural Revolution, who is running it is the Gang of Four, and the leader is Mao's wife. But the Gang of Four can pretty much do anything in the name of Mao. They have the support of Mao. And so during the Cultural Revolution, so much of it is that Gang of Four, and they are the radical left. So sometimes, you know, we have the rightists like Deng Xiaoping and Zhou Enlai, and then you have the leftists, and that would be like the Gang of Four. So it's amazing inside the Communist Party, you've got different factions, right? Also existed in the Soviet Union as well, and that would be a problem for them there as well. So here, Source G highlights how thought, arts were changed by Mao's policies. Definitely. It influences the nature of the arts in many ways. You know, it's trying to get rid of it's trying to get rid of the waste. It's trying to get rid of the elitism that existed in the arts world. I mean, if you think about it, in the arts world, is there elitism? Well, heck yeah, there is. There is. And you can find in many professions, you can find in many areas of society, there could be a little sense of elitism. Because part of it is, you know, what is art? All that. All right, so we kind of got our impact here on thought, possibly activities there. Any other source that we throw in there?
Source E.
Source E?
E, yeah.
D or E?
As an elephant.
As an elephant, there we go. E, all right. And with source E, what is that highlighting? Why'd you pick that one?
It highlights like that. The agricultural side, the decrease in the amount of like grain and crops and livestock.
Yeah.
And it also highlights how industrial output of
Yeah, which is yeah, which is their money.
yeah.
Yep.
All that it decreased by a lot.
Okay.
Almost a quarter.
I'm not good at wordsmithing here, but so yeah, source E highlights how the Great Leap Forward program negatively impacted agriculture and industrial output. Definitely it does. All right. How about another one we could throw in there? How about another good one? Now, not always do you always have to throw in sources that highlight the negative or highlight the claim. You can, like in the IB, it's gray, and so you can throw in a positive one. What do you got? Yeah. Yep. So source A indicates that marriage structure has changed. Women have more say in marriage. Like divorce, which divorce rate did go up initially in China. But you would see that again, typically more in the urban area than in the rural area. It's going to be extremely hard. And another source as a possibility here, again, we don't always have to highlight the negativity, you know, economically. So even though we have source E that shows Great Leap Forward was a disaster early in the PRC, which is the People's Republic of China, the economy and standard living improved, as indicated by source C. So you've got a couple that show that yes, there is some negative consequences, and then you got a couple that show that life did change, and it may not necessarily be a negative thing. Here again, in the outside information, there is some positives in there, and there is some negatives. You know, another one I just thought of, I don't know why it just popped in my mind, maybe because it's nice outside and pretty soon some of us might be running around barefoot. bare feet, the Barefoot Doctors program, camp movement. You know, it's a program, which basically would send the doctors off to the countryside and improve health that way. And it was very, very successful there. You can also throw in education. So, so then, like anything, you know, if we were writing this, a simple wrap up would just simply be, there we go. You just put back here, in conclusion, or however you want to throw in there a concluding way, but in conclusion, Mao's policies were far-reaching. Mao's policies impacted thought, the economy, activities, and the family structure. Oh yeah, if that was down there, that's a tasty response. Boy, and that is worth 9 points. I'm saying we're easily 6 or above, easily 6 and above on that one. Would have. So it's unfortunate. If there was an IB history exam that I would have definitely liked for us to take is paper 1, because I think we always score pretty darn well in paper 1. So there we go. Wow. All right. Thoughts, questions on that? I know we did it together, most of it together, but please just, you know, submit that, put that in. Put that in the Schoology. That'll be fantastic doing that. All right. Thoughts on that? Okay, so now our last bit here that I would like for us to do here is let's evaluate this guy. And so in Schoology, and you can work with historical buddies on this. Right, in Schoology, I have opened up an assignment called Mao's Zedong's Totalitarian, and there is a Google link there. All right, and for those at home, let me see here. I'll put that Google link into the chat as well. So let me do that. Got my mad cut and pasting skills going here. All right, and so what I would like you to do with a historical buddy, and those at home, let's complete it, is just like we did with Stalin and Hitler. We want to look at to what degree is he a totalitarian. So to be a totalitarian means you have close to total control. You have the pulse, you dictate. An authoritarian, yeah, you're ruling as an authoritarian. So there is a distinction between authoritarian and totalitarian. Total control. How much did this guy, Mao, have? All right, so you're looking at, and again, using your policies activity, anything that we have, and explain which areas of the totalitarian state did Mao succeed in. All right, at least 4. So click on what you think are at least 4 and explain why. Here, where he did not, 2. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this guy? 1 being low, 10 being high. All right. And comparing Hitler, Stalin, and Mao, which one do you think is more totalitarian? All right, which one do you think it is? And I'm not asking you to explain why, but which one? Okay. So with that, let's take about 10, 15 minutes here and do that. Work with a historical buddy. All right. So if you are going to move to work with someone, make sure we do have some social distancing. All right. So Joe, you can pop 1 seat back. All right. Yeah. Okay, good question. If you're working with someone, just put everyone's name together so only one comes in. All right? All right? Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, you can work all 3. You 3 right there? Yep. Oh, Jack's like, what about me, man? You want Jack? Jack can move up one, and you got 4.
Oh, it says it.
Even when my mom sat down, it was a great box right before he still tower.
Yes, it's not that he relinquished any real titles or anything like that. He just shifted and let others move forward, but no way did he relinquish.
It's really weird. His mind stuff. All these.
He did, but again, you have to look at greater influence. Mao is felt in the city than in the countryside. So, like some of these policies that he tried to reshape China, try to get rid of all the customs and the traditions of the old. It is in that rural countryside that it still remains.
Like, for instance,
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Or the simply, let's control the population. And you still have people in the countryside having more kids. What are we going to use? And then for
Just letters.
Okay.
So I just need to know here.
Yep. Yep. Well, I have. She's not. But let's see here. Got to get them right because they're twins. All right. She. Okay. Excuse me. Let's go back. She's here. She's not. I had her last try. Yep. So Matt's here. I got Spencer. Yeah. Yep. I got Joe. I got Emma. Yep. Yep. Here. Anna. Yep. Yeah. She's absent today. Yeah. Got it. All right. We're on a roll here. Center. And us.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. All right.
Okay,
We're
thank
good.
you.
For money.
Like mountains.
Alright.
Did Jen Jesse die before?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it just seemed like it's kind of they definitely that I don't. I'm not sure on when Jane Joshi had passed away. I think he might have lived a little bit longer. Okay, spoke. Got a year earlier.
All right. What's Taiwan's status like right now?
Taiwan status right now, they look at themselves as an independent country, but
Oh, we acknowledge that.
we do not formally recognize them as independent. But we do definitely give them a lot of military and economic assistance. We do seem to be the protector of them. China views them like they had viewed other regions as a area that belongs to them, and it's just in rebellion, and they definitely want to bring Taiwan back into the family.
I mean, in doing so, that's more all costs.
Yes, it would. The United States is not willing to accept Taiwan to be given to return.
But and does Taiwan still maintain their capitalist idea? So
They're probably more capitalist than we are.
wow.
So, I supervise Mr. Arnebeck's economics class, and they were just talking about looking at an indicator of where the capitalist regions are. It's amazing how the United States is actually lower on that list. We're still in the top 25, but so I think, it's hard to find a pure capitalistic society for us. The government does intervene in the economy. And so whether it's through their regulations, through economic programs, tax program systems, all that stuff. So,
Does Taiwan have like a president?
Yep. Yep, they do. All right, let's see if we can take a few more minutes here. Get a few more in. Or you guys broke off and you went in different directions. You didn't go with 4, huh? All right. It's all good. I gotta see where we. Well, I got my spreadsheet over this year and how we ranked them, and so we'll see how that goes. See how that goes. Where we rank Mao. Someone had asked me that in 3.1 where I ranked Mao. I said I might rank him the top dog, but
I feel people seem that had the most success. This time, so he got the citizens. I was so much. Putting out the opposition, I'm sure he's using his own people to, having to use a big army. It's like,
he could mobilize the people. He definitely could.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he quite understood how to use everything.
I'll just see him like the biggest downfall is trying to go to the car to the not pacing stuff. Like forward. I'm not seeing the years. Allowed it to stretch out.
Interesting. Huh.
In English, last year we mentioned the book about and living in Tritonus. And it goes through like the same to now. So this thing's out of the background.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm missing something here. Yeah, there we go. Yes. Wow. So, it's gonna be done in Schoology. So you probably know right now. I don't know how they set it up, but I hope that you would be able to take down your store with it. They had passed a few years ago, or the MD, Minnesota Department of Education, had come up with this, that you, the seniors, would be the first class that would take a citizenship test, which was a response to, one could say, a number of interest groups that say, to have a civics test, show that we have some basic knowledge of civics. The problem is, some school districts may not necessarily have a civics class. You may not have to take a government class, like this 2-year history class. You don't have to take a government class. So there's going to be a segment of the school population that may not have been exposed. So how can they take a civics test? So this civics test, one could say, got lost dealing with the pandemic. And so it was put on the back burner, and all of a sudden someone must have realized, oh, we need to take a civics test. So you've got a civics test. I think it's going to probably happen next week. 13th. All right. So that's 2 weeks from now, right? Or is it next week? Next Friday-ish? Thursday? Yes, it would be Thursday. It should be pushed out in Schoology. It's on your own. So whenever you complete it. Pretty much what it is, it's the citizenship test is patterned after the actual citizenship test. There's a pool of questions that someone who wants to be a U.S. citizen would be asked. Something like, how many senators are there in the U.S. Senate?
How many U.S. senators are there?
Chloe, how many?
100. It says 100.
Okay, on that. How many does each state have?
I don't.
Well, if we have 100 senators, there's 50 states. 2. Each state is given 2.
You're asking me to do basic.
Yes, I am. I'm asking you to do basic math. Oh my gosh. The tricky part is they may ask how many U.S. representatives you have, and that varies from state to state. So, like in Minnesota, we have 8, and when in doubt, you have to think about if we have 10 electoral votes, and it's based on representation, and every state is given 2. If we have 10 and we have 2 senators, again, simple math, right? And we just stick it with our fingers here. We take 2 away, we got 8. We'll have 8 representatives. Thank you. Well, get our own Civil War. Yeah. They're very much like the 100 Years' War.
Some cases,
All these wars so close to each other. Yeah, in some ways, we showcase it. You had a little short period of use.
pretty much a continuation.
Oh, they are. They are. All right, here we go. Let's just wrap this up here. All right, Mao has, okay. All right, so here we go. Let's just wrap this up here and then we can have some downtime. I do, those that are here, you gotta make sure, I've got some letters here. It's probably related to, I'd say, graduation, perhaps. So make sure that I pass that out to you. So when we look at Mao, I think, Mao does get rate pretty, and perhaps maybe because of his longevity, but just again, how much control he does have. He can destroy the economy and still be the leader. He can throw the country in utter chaos and still be the leader. That just shows how much support he has and how powerful the guy is. Does he have some detractors? Absolutely. But you don't see what we call an organized coups against Mao that you may have seen attempt against Hitler. He is feared like Stalin, definitely. And political opponents do get sent to the countryside. They definitely do. So when I put all these numbers together here, Mao comes out on a scale again of 1 to 10, and if you are 7 or above, that gets you into that totalitarian category, one would say. Mao does come in at an 8. He averages an 8, so he's pretty darn good. When I go back and I look at, because I got all our stats from the previous ones and I crunch those numbers. Stalin comes in at 7.96, which, again, if we're looking at that, yep, he would come after him. But Hitler comes in just above an 8. So it does seem to be matching, yes. So there we go. But Hitler doesn't have the longevity that Mao and Stalin has. So what is it that we sometimes think that Hitler might be ranked higher than Mao and Stalin? Right? Maybe it is, how quickly he does change Nazi Germany and how far-reaching impact it is. And perhaps maybe the war, the Second World War, is thrown in there too, and how actions of one can impact multiple nations here. For Mao, one looks at China being relatively isolated even after the revolution or civil war ends. You could almost say that China is still isolated in the 50s and the 60s, and it's not until the 1970s do we start seeing China really go on a new direction here, and that's near the end of Mao's tenure as leader. And relationship between us and China definitely improved in the 1970s with that. All right. Do you have any final thoughts on Mao? Any thoughts on him? Would you sit down and meet the guy? No? I mean, definitely if he walked in the room, you would know Mao's in the house. He's 5'11", so you can't. He's tall. He's taller than Stalin and Hitler. I mean, they're all taller. Well, Stalin was 5'6", so we could hang. You know, we can hang out. I think it's interesting. Mao was 5'11", and Deng Xiaoping takes over, and he's 4'11". All right, so, and he's the architect of the Tiananmen Square massacre. All right, so some might say, you know, Deng Xiaoping is, you know, he might belong on that mantle as well. Still, I think Mao would be interesting, but you know, just don't let him breathe on you, because apparently he doesn't brush his teeth, and so you might have some bad breath with that as well. I mean, they all got some very interesting things. He didn't. So the closest to one could say Mao having like a formal, you know, taking care of his hygiene was when we saw him swimming in the river. That was probably the closest to him taking care of his hygiene there. So with that, these leaders all have some very interesting quirks with them as well. We are not, though, completely done with the authoritarians. The next thing that we're going to look at, and I'm going to do that tomorrow, but it has been opened up, is the case study on authoritarian, where you get to focus on one of your choice. And there's a list. And so there are a number of other very interesting authoritarians out there that we have not looked at. I mean, even in our own backyard, we have authoritarians like Augusto Pinochet and Juan Perón of Argentina, and of course, the man with the ZZ Top beard, Fidel Castro. Right? So we've got some in our own backyard, but there's also on other continents as well, and other regions. You know, so we haven't even touched the ones that are in Africa, but Big Daddy Idi Amin. All right, and that was his nickname, you know, Big Daddy. Maybe because he had lots of kids and multiple wives to go with that. And then in Europe, of course, how can you not forget, you know, the guy who started this fascism, you know, El Duce, Benito Mussolini. All right, so you got all that. So between now and tomorrow, maybe take a look at that if you want to, just to kind of get a sense. But tomorrow I will introduce that activity. All right, and that's why I have some card of books here as well. So with that, we've got about 10 minutes left here. I don't really want to introduce that activity, so we'll have 10 minutes of get yourself ready for second hour. All right, those at home, you can exit and have a fantastic Tuesday. All right.